I have a compost pile here that I would like to have continue to age and evolve and decompose on our way to spring. But here we are in mid-December, and it's going to be getting awfully cold pretty soon. I'd like to share notes on what I like to do to take a compost pile and protect and insulate it from the harshness of winter so it's not a solid block of ice come spring. This is compost that's come out of our chicken system over the last 2 months or so. And as you can see in the high tunnel that we do most of our winter composting, our winter chicken run, the soil in there is still quite dark, and if I were to temp probe it, I would suspect most of this young compost is somewhere between 60 and 80, almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's because of the benefit of being protected from winter elements by this poly, being in a high tunnel, and having the chickens work with it. Once it comes down through this pipeline and it's outside, it's now exposed to winter conditions in a real way. And here we are on the north side of this structure. There's a lot of shade in here, and it's a little bit of a pocket, so the cold settles. I really need to do some work to keep this from locking solid. Now in my case, I'm going to lean into two things. I'm going to be working with dry hay, and I'm going to work with an old tarp. In an ideal world, you have something that is loose and dry and bulky, insulative. Dried hay is great. If you have some clean quality straw, ideally not sprayed straw, maybe some dried wood chips, even some semi-decomposed wood chips. Leaf bags are amazing, but we want something insulative and we want something to cap this. But first I'm going to shape it up, get it a little bit flattened out and ready to be covered. Moving it more to this shape helps a bit in a few ways. It helps lower the overall profile of the pile, so it's a little closer to the earth. The colder it gets, the windier it gets, the less you want to have huge peaks that are exposed to wind and radiative losses. The other thing it allows me to do is once I put a tarp over this, I can put insulation on top and it's less likely to slide off. So that'll be the next step, but we'll let the chickens have some fun for a few minutes first. I've got a beat up old tarp here that's going to be great for this application. This is definitely one of those areas you by no means need to buy new plastic to insulate a compost pile. This has some holes in it, that's fine. That'll allow snow to melt on top and leak in or gases to escape. It's not a big deal. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and spread this over. If you have old greenhouse plastic, this is the kind of thing to look for something out of the dumpster or find from a waste stream, but definitely you don't need to buy anything new. It's spread over the pile, it covers it thoroughly. If you had a piece that's too small, no big deal. Too big, you can fold it over. This is a little bigger than is needed, but that's fine. I don't want to modify it because I might need it larger for other things. And the nice thing about an old tarp is it has these little grommets. You could take old wire or string, paracord, and tie through those loops and tie it onto through the loop of a brick or onto firewood or things like that to create very simple weights on the sides of this. We have collected a whole bunch of old milk crates for our composting system, so I'll simply use those around the edges and fill them with unfinished compost as some dead weight. So now the tarp is pinned down. I used 3 different methods just to show a wide range of options. In one case, I took some heavy-duty old locust boards that we use for dividers in our composting system, laid that over the tarp. So this could be logs, it could be chunks of firewood. Here I'm using some milk crates that I filled with compost Those are going to be easy to grab the handles of and lift off later. I can access them pretty easily. Maybe you've got buckets with holes drilled in the bottom that you could use as weights filled with soil. And then on this side, I took some hay bales and pinned it down with that, which spans a nice area, easy to move around, and they also provide some insulation and a convenient way to hold on to some of the insulation that's going to go on top. This side, the southern side, I'm not pinning down in any explicit way because I may want to be able to peel this back and add more compost from this run throughout the winter when we get thaws. But for now, I've got this laid up, ready to go, and now it's ready to cap it, insulate it, and let it mellow for the winter. The other benefit of having the peak shaved down and flattened, beyond making it easier to lay insulation on top, is it also makes it a little less prone to be caught by the wind. It's a lower wind profile there. So now let me get some insulation on there. You'll notice I didn't go crazy breaking each bale into 100 little pieces, but rather working with the flakes as they came off. And part of that is because this is dry. If I made this into an incredibly loose puff, the wind could take it away, whereas these flakes tend to stay put. One good snow on top, which we're supposed to get heavy snow tomorrow and then frigid cold the day after. The snow should pin them down, and then as that slowly melts, they'll stick a bit better. And if they fall off a little, it's easier to put back. If you're in a really windy place, you'd want to be careful about very, very deep and loose. Question might be, why put a tarp on in the first place? In this case, what you saw from the beginning was that this is compost that's on its way to being usable in the spring. It's more finished compost. And so if I were to have the hay mixed into that, I'd have loose, nearly unbroken down hay mixed into aged compost. Not ideal for me. If you just have a hot compost you want to keep going and it's early in its process, the tarp isn't really actually necessary. If you want to use very, very loose, dry material, loose leaves, etc., you may consider hammering in some stakes and putting lengths of old garden fencing or snow fence around the area so you can dump in your loose fill on top of the tarp and have it not blow away. I'll probably end up breaking another bale open just to cover some of those areas where the blue is exposed on the north, east, and west side, and leave the south side open so I can add more in a little bit. But for 5 minutes and a few dollars in hay, which I can use in compost later on, it's a worthwhile gesture on a compost pile that, if left to 9 degrees exposed with heavy winds, would absolutely turn into a rock solid block of ice and not be compost in the spring. So this will keep it warm and toasty, breaking down, and then we can add more from the chicken system, maybe a second tarp if needed, or we get a thaw in January, we can flip the whole pile and reassemble with the parts that are here. Straightforward system for insulating compost in the winter months and keeping it pretty clean while you do so. Hope this is useful. Thanks for watching.